Hello, Comics Alternative fans. Before we start with the episode, we want to invite all of you to check out our Patreon campaign.
That's right. Go to www.patreon.com/comicsalternative for more details. There you'll find more information about the campaign and the cool rewards levels we have.
For as little as $1 a month, you can help us maintain good quality comics talk, and the more you contribute, the more perks you get.
These include monthly podcast episodes exclusive to Patreon supporters, as well as the chance to help us choose which books we review on the show. So be sure to visit www.patreon.com/comicsalternative and become one of our proud podcast patrons.
Yeah, and now on with the show.
This is the Comics Alternative, episode 134. A look at the May Previews catalog.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
And it's the beginning of the month, so this week's episode is going to be me and Andy looking through the May Previews catalog. And there's a lot for us to discuss in there, right, Andy?
Oh boy, there is so much stuff here. I hope we can cram it all into whatever we do, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours.
We'll see how it goes. But before we get into the long haul, we should let all of our listeners know that this episode of the Comics Alternative is brought to you by the wonderful, incredible, and helpful folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There you'll find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are 20 to 35% off of the cover price, and every single month they have incredible, unbelievable specials. Sometimes those specials are at 45% off cover price. Sometimes you'll even find them at 50% off of the cover price. But many times you can find discounts that are more impressive than that.
That's right, and as usual, it's always Bundle Madness time at DCB Service. Now, we're recording this on May the 3rd, and as of right now, DCB Service does not have their May bundles up. But if the April bundles are any indication, you're going to have a lot of great bundles to look at. And again, the bundles work by, they are, if you buy the comics in bundle, you're saving a lot of money because it's 50% off the cover price of a comic if you buy them in bundle. And in the past, we've had great Valiant bundles, DC Vertigo bundles, and May looks like it's going to be the exact same type of great selection in bundles.
That's right. So go to the website of Discount Comic Book Service, and they will soon have their May specials up. So that's dcbservice.com. Go there for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you.
That's right. Let them know where you heard about it.
That's right. And just to remind listeners, a few weeks ago we made it easy for you guys to do this. If you go I think it's anywhere on the website, you will find a link. There's a little icon that has an envelope. If you click on that, it should open up your email program, whatever email program you use, and it will automatically have the DCB Service customer service address in that message, and you can send them a message and says, "Hey, the two guys with PhDs sent me."
Yeah.
So, Andy, before we get started with the nitty-gritty of the show, let's remind listeners of something that I think you and I have said in passing one or two times, but in our last regular review episode from last week when Andy Kunka and I did a spotlight on Koyama Press, we realized after the recording that we forgot to mention that Andy Kunka is going to be taking a hiatus from the podcast for a couple of months, at least the regular review shows. He's got a number of things going on, and he wanted Andy Wolverton to fill in his absence. Now, Kunka will be back occasionally. We already have 2, maybe 3 interviews for May and June set up, so he'll be back for those. But for the regular review shows, Wolverton, it's the two of us.
All right. Well, I'm very pleased to be here, and I thank you and Andy for having me on. It's always a pleasure to fill in when I can, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, well, you're a regular contributor to the Comics Alternative, and in fact, I know we've mentioned this before in a podcast, but it's worth mentioning again that in June at Heroes Con in Charlotte, North Carolina, not only is the Comics Alternative, all 3 of us, you, me, and Kunka, going to be there, but we will have a table at the con.
Yeah, that's right. So if anybody wants to see what these 3 crazy guys are like in person, you can come meet us. You can tell us in person, how crazy we are or how off base we are in our reviews, or just stop by and say hi. So we would, any of that is good. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that because, listeners may not know I've never actually met Derek or Andy in person, so that'll be a first.
Yeah, it's kind of funky to be working together as we have for about 2 years almost, I guess, and never having met each other. So it's gonna be fun in a variety of levels. And when we find out where our table is going to be, we will let you, our dear listener, know.
That's right, and we do hope you come see us.
That's right. Another thing worth mentioning is that you mentioned that we're recording this on Sunday, May 3rd. Yesterday was Free Comic Book Day. And I had a good time at Free Comic Book Day, and I'll mention some of the stuff that we did. But, Andy, you have a curious Free Comic Book Day that you were sharing with me off air.
Yeah, well, my local store is Third Eye Comics in Annapolis, and they've been around for about 7 years. And every year, their Free Comic Book Day gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I was talking to one of the employees a couple of weeks ago who said that last year they had over 6,000 people in the store on Free Comic Book Day. So I went this year, yesterday, just mainly to look at the discount tables because the way they have the store set up, you have to go inside the store to get the free comic books. But the line just went on forever, and they were letting like 5-10 people in the store at a time because there were so many people. But on the outside is where they had the clearance items, the 50% off trade paperbacks and hardcovers, and the discount comic books. So that was really what I was interested in yesterday. So I actually didn't get any free comic books, but I got a lot of really good deals on some trade and hardcovers.
Really?
Yep.
So what are some of the deals that you got?
I got turning back around here to see what I got a Mr. X hardcover, The Brides of Mr. X. I got, one of the things I'm really excited about is the Crazy and Ignatz 1916 to 1918 collection, which I'd been looking for a while. I got one of the Love and Rockets volumes for 50% off. I got,
is that the Esperanza you were telling me?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Esperanza. And I got a book actually that I read a couple of years ago but didn't own called My Friend Dahmer, which I think you guys covered.
That's one of the first books that we reviewed on the podcast.
Yeah. It's one of those I've always wanted to own, and at 50% off, I thought, yeah, why not? And I got a few other things here and there, so it was definitely a good trip to the store.
Good, even though you couldn't partake of the free comics.
Yeah, well, maybe next year.
Yeah. By the time that this episode goes up, the on-location show that I recorded for Free Comic Book Day will have already gone up. So I don't want to go into too much detail about, that show that I recorded yesterday on location. We had a good time, a lot of good discussion, talked to a lot of people. But there are a couple of local shops in my area. There is my home shop, which is Collected Comics and Games in Plano, Texas, and then a block from that collected is a bigger comic shop called Madness. Now, as I've done the past couple of years, in the morning I took my daughter, and this time it was just my daughter. Sometimes it's a daughter and maybe one or two friends, but this time it was just my daughter. We went first to Madness when they opened about 9 o'clock, and Madness is a really big shop. They have tons of comics, books, games, T-shirts, all of the pop culture stuff that almost every comic shop has, ramped up several times. So it's really big, it's huge, and the lines are always long. Now, I had to wait in line. My daughter and I had to wait in line for the free comic book day books, but at least I was able to get in. You weren't able to get into Third Eye. But so, yeah, I didn't mind standing in line, and it wasn't that bad. It was about 30 minutes or so. So, and they allowed, it's not bad. And they allowed 10 comics. And so they get a lot of free comic book day books. So that's good, because some shops limit to just 3, 4, or 5. But yeah, Madness is pretty good about that. And they have a lot of merchandise, big shop. But I still prefer my local what I call my home shop, which is Collected, just a block away from Madness. It's a lot smaller, but it's a little more homey. It's closer. The people there are very friendly, and I'm sure the people at Madness are friendly as well. But the thing is, it's so damn big that I think that there's something a little distancing to me about that when I've gone in there, and also maybe I'm a little prejudiced because when we first started the podcast, I had approached the manager at Madness and about if not being the sponsor, then at least letting us leave some of our bookmarks there, and he wouldn't let us leave bookmarks, free bookmarks. He said counter space is at a premium, and it was a really big counter. I had no idea what he was talking about. So I do have to say that I still harbor a little prejudice against the people at Madness. But, Collected, and before it was Collected, it was Lone Star. Very, very good people work there, and they, they know their comics. They'll treat you right, very friendly, and it's almost like I said during the On Location show, it's kind of like Cheers, everybody knows your name. But then someone said, a better example would be the comic shop in Big Bang Theory, because they're very friendly and people know each other there. So maybe that's a more apt comparison. So anyway, we had a successful Free Comic Book Day show. And, I got, as I usually do, a lot, probably most of the titles for Free Comic Book Day because between the two shops and then also me doing it on Location Store, I have to have a copy of about everything that they have in order for us to talk about it. So I just want to mention, without going into too much detail, some of the ones that really stood out to me. We discussed this a little bit on the On Location show, but we kept getting sidetracked into other topics. I think by far my favorite was the Free Comic Book Day title from the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, Defend Comics. A lot of great contributions, the first of which is the best, and it's a brand new Shadow Hero story from Jean Louis Yang and Sonny Liu. This one is called The Green Turtle Fights for Free Speech. It's very good. It's just a 2-page story, but if you liked last year's Shadow Hero, then you definitely have to check out the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund's Free Comic Book Day title. But there are other good stories in there as well. Drawn and Quarterly always has a pretty darn good Free Comic Book Day contribution. This one, you get half of it are selections from Super Mutant Magic Academy by Julian Tamaki, and then the other half of it is from Kate Beaton's Step Aside Pops, a Vagrant collection. So, and those are okay. Those are more strips than anything. The Beguiling Books contribution, it was really good. They had a series of shorts from, in fact, Beaton, one of hers from the Hark collections in there, and a lot of other indie and alternative comics are in there as well. Top Shelf had one for their upcoming Motorcycle Samurai book, and so that was really cool. Dark Circle Comics had 3 segments of some of their new comics coming up. Same thing with Titan and their Doctor Who titles. I'm a sucker for Doctor Who. But I think in addition to the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, my other favorite from this year's Free Comic Book Day was from Fantagraphics. this one was divided in between Hip Hop Family Tree and Dash Shaw's cosplayers. Most of it is Hip Hop Family Tree. They call it a 3-in-1. So there's a little selection from the first volume of Hip Hop Family Tree, which came out a couple of years ago. Then there's a little selection from the second volume, which came out last year. But most of the Fantagraphics Free Comic Book Day issue, at least the Hip Hop Family Tree section, is devoted to selections from the upcoming, late this summer, third volume of Hip Hop Family Tree.
So, well, that makes plenty of sense since the third one is coming out, and I've only read the first one, but I thought the first one was outstanding, and that's probably a great way to market all three of those books, and to it's amazing to me how many people still don't know about that book, even people in the comics world. I've talked to people about that book, and It's amazing how many people still aren't really aware of it as they should be. So I'm glad that had a presence at Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah, definitely. And I was equally pleased that Shaw's Cosplayers is in there, and it's a brand new story. So I guess this is going to be an ongoing series for Dash Shaw. I've read the first couple of issues of Cosplayers, so I guess this may be from the third one. I'm not sure. Or it could be just a separate one. In fact, we were talking in our On Location show about different ways that publishers package their Free Comic Book Day contribution. Some, it's like a reprint of something that's already been out. Sometimes it's an early release of something that's about to come out. Sometimes they're just brand new stories you can't find anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And then there are other ways that publishers handle Free Comic Book Day as well.
Yeah, and I guess there's no guarantee that some of the things that are new to Free Comic Book Day are going to end up in a future collection. I mean, that's not a given, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I use as an example some of the things that are exclusive to Free Comic Book Day. Atomic Robo. Now, you will find stories. Now, the Red 5 didn't have anything about Atomic Robo this year, but in the past you would have Atomic Robo stories that, from what I remember, weren't in the regular comics of Atomic Robo, but in the collections you could find them. Mm-hmm. So, and that's always nice because that makes the Free Comic Book Day contribution extra special, because if you can't find those things anywhere else except when they're collected eventually, then they make them all the more worth getting.
Yep.
So we hope that everyone had a very nice Free Comic Book Day, whether you were able to get inside of your shop, such as I was, or not, such as the case with Andy. So, Andy, you want to jump into the May Previews catalog?
Yeah, let's do it.
You mentioned a second ago that there's a lot here, and this may be a long show. I don't know. So we got a lot to get to, and I have marked quite a bit in my catalog, as I'm sure you have. So, this is actually, it's worth noting that I didn't think about this until you pointed it out in an email the other day, that this is the first time you've done a preview show on the Comics Alternative.
That's right. And when I first started listening to you and Andy, this was probably one of the aspects of the show that really pulled me in, because you guys were talking about a lot of comics that I was aware of, but a lot of comics that I was not aware of, and creators I had never heard of, especially in the back half of the catalog. So it was a real revelation to me for somebody that was coming back into comics after having been out for quite a while. So I always look forward to the preview show, and it's really exciting to be doing a preview show too.
Good. Well, welcome to our little previews world.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. So now, you're a part of the preview shows as well now, and it's worth noting that Pacino on the forum has been a part of our preview shows as well. In that, what he does is, and this is incredible, he listens to the shows and then he highlights in a forum entry, a forum posting, what we talk about on our preview shows, the page in the catalog and all. So he provides much more thorough show notes than I write up when I put up the preview show. So thank you, Pacino. Again.
Yeah. If you haven't seen what Pacino does on the forum, it's a great capsule summary of what we talk about or what you guys talk about on the preview show. So if you haven't been to the forum, check it out.
Yeah, and we may be giving Pacino a run for his money.
Yeah,
this month. So we start, as you know, Andy, having listened to us in our preview shows, in the first part of the catalog, we do not discuss everything, of course. We wouldn't have time for that. But we start at the beginning with the Dark Horse section. And where do you begin in your wish list for Dark Horse, or what you would like to point out?
Actually, I have some brand new things coming out that I want to point out, but I also have a few reissues coming out. And I know you guys talk sometimes about reissues as well. And the first thing I have is on page 44.
Okay, because I have something, before we get to that, I start on, and I think yours is the same thing that I highlighted on 44. But on 43, there's a new title by Kurt Piers, Jason Copeland, and Pete Toms does the cover. And this is The Tomorrows. And the tagline at the very top of the page is, "Who owns your future?" The solicit is, "They told you the counterculture was dead. They were wrong. Welcome to the new reality. A bold new speculative fiction comic from the mind of writer Kurt Piers." Is it P-I-R-E-S? Is it Piers or Pieris?
I wondered if it was Pieris.
It may be Pieris, so let's just say that. With each issue illustrated by a different brilliant artist. So, they're doing something like, number of other comics have done, where each issue has a different illustrator. The future, art is illegal. Everything everyone ever posted online has been weaponized against them. The reign of the corporation is quickly becoming as absolute as it is brutal, unless the Tomorrows can stop it. So, this is a futuristic title. It's one of 6, so it's a miniseries. And, we get a lot of these futuristic, apocalyptic type narratives, and especially when it deals with the media. Here they're saying that everything everyone ever posted online has been weaponized against them. It kind of reminds me of directions like we saw in The Private Eye, right? What online communication can lead to. So anyway, this looks interesting, and I think it's worth checking out.
Yeah, I actually had a question mark next to that one. I'm kind of on the fence about whether I want to get it. I really don't know much of Kurt Pieris' work, except I'm a little bit familiar with Pop, which I guess is fairly new.
Yes, that came out I don't know, maybe summer, fall of last year. I think.
Yeah, I think I looked at the first issue of that, but I'm really not that familiar with his work. So for me, it's a question mark.
Okay.
But I might pick it up.
Okay. But you were excited about what's on page 44.
Yes. On page 44, if you are a fan of Matt Kent, like I am, you see that his Two Sisters, a super spy graphic novel, is being reissued in hardcover. Now, this originally came out in 2004. And if you're not familiar with Matt Kent's work, he has a lot of spy/espionage titles out there, and Two Sisters is actually one of the few that I have not read. Again, this is a reissue from Dark Horse, a hardcover, 344 pages, and the solicitation has, "From the imagination of Matt Kent, Two Sisters is at once a fanciful World War II thriller full of codes, gadgets, and cyanide capsules, and the heartbreaking story of Elle and Anna, whose shared past and secrets are dredged up when Elle is recruited into His Majesty's service as a covert agent." So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. And not only is it written by Kent, but it's also drawn by Kent, which for me is a huge selling point.
Yeah, exactly. And they're doing with Two Sisters what they did previously or what they're doing with Pistol Whip. I don't think it's come out yet. And that is repackage some Dark Horse, repackaging some of Matt Kent's earlier comics. And so I guess Pistol Whip, that collection should be out pretty soon because it was solicited 2, maybe 3 months ago. So now we get Two Sisters. And, I have to tell you, I probably will get this. I'm not certain. And here's my uncertainty. I have the original Two Sisters, but it's in black and white. And it's in paperback. So I can't remember where I got it. I think I found it somewhere at a bookshop or online for like really cheap. So, or at least I'm going to tell myself that so I can justify, getting this new edition. But this one is in color, so it's the first time that this will be in color. You mentioned that it's a deluxe hardback. So it says in the solicit, matching Kent's complete pistol whip. So they're doing really well by Matt Kent. You know, all of his mind management that's the series is about to wrap down. They're collecting all of mind management in these nice hardback editions. Then we are getting Pistol Whip, and now Two Sisters.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. Also, I'm kind of like you. I have a copy of Pistol Whip. That's it's kind of an old, beaten up, used copy that I got cheap. So I really want to get the nice deluxe edition, which I think that comes out next month. Mm-hmm. It's coming out pretty soon. So it is nice to see Kent get the nice deluxe treatment here.
Yeah, and he, you know, his this work that we're talking about, Two Sisters and Pistol Whip, if I'm not mistaken, that was top shelf, right?
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So now, you know, he apparently has a deal to bring the stuff over to Dark Horse. So that's a good choice. My next selection is if you turn the page to 46. This is one, and I do not know if I will get it, but it does look interesting. This is Jonathan Case's The New Deal, and this is another hardcover.
Yep, I have that marked as well.
Yeah. And you know, I don't want to read the solicit for all of these, but maybe it's worth mentioning this solicit again. The Waldorf Astoria is the classiest hotel among the Manhattan skyline in the 1930s New York City. When a charming woman checks in with a high society entourage, a bellhop and a maid get caught up in a series of mysterious thefts. The stakes quickly grow perilous, and the pair must rely on each other to discover the truth while navigating delicate class politics. So one of the things I like about this is, well, first off, it's Case's art. There's the really nice one-page sample of the New Deal. And then you have the cover, and I guess this will be the final cover. It doesn't say otherwise. So I like the art, but also I like the setup. I love the time that this is taking place in, the 1930s. But I also like the fact that, you know, this is a thriller mystery, but it's not the kind of genre mashing that we've been seeing a lot of over the past couple of years. And again, nothing wrong with it. You know, so you would have a murder mystery sci-fi or a murder mystery fantasy or Western or something of the sort. You know, this just seems to be something that, you know, set in the 1930s, and for all we know, it may have a noir feel to it.
Yeah, it certainly could have one. And, you know, it also has down here also available the Green River Killer, a true detective story, which was one of my favorite picks from the year it came out. I can't remember exactly if that was 2011, 10, which also is Jonathan Case. And I'm going to be interested to see how Case's work differs when he's writing it himself. Now, with the Green River Killer, he was also, I think he was basically adapting a story of the real detective who investigated the Green River Killer case. So this is something of a, adaptation, but this is completely written by Case. So that's going to be interesting to see.
Cool. I'll have to check out the Green River Killer now, because I have not read that.
Oh, yeah, that's excellent.
So where do you go next in the Dark Horse section?
I go to page 52.
Okay.
And we have there a friend of the show, Fred Van Lente's Resurrectionists, Near-Death Experience trade paperback. The Resurrectionists are a select group of people who can not only remember their past lives, but also become them. And there's more to it. Derek, I don't know if this is a reissue because this is coming out as a trade paperback. It says it collects Resurrectionists 1 through 6. I don't know exactly when those came out.
Well, you know, The Resurrectionist is one of those titles that several months ago they announced would be digital only, because there were a few. I think Sundowners by Tim Seeley was another one of these that Dark Horse was doing that had 1, 2, maybe 3 issues, and then they announced, and I'm not sure why they made this decision. Andy and I speculated about this it was a previous preview show, in fact, that for whatever reason they decided to take those titles, discontinue the paper copy single issues, release the single issues digitally, but they did have plans for actual hard copies in the trades, for the trades. And so this is now that first trade of the Resurrectionists. So it's not a reissue, it's just a new publication of one of the titles that Dark Horse had taken to digital only.
Okay. Well, that could have been why it kind of slipped by me, because I knew that they were going to do that, like you said, with the Tim Seeley title, but I didn't know about this one. So that's good to know.
Yeah. So where do you go next in Dark Horse?
I have a short stop over to page 72.
Okay, because I want to mention something that's on page 63. And this is Frank Frazetta's The Adventures of the Snowman. Now, I'm familiar with Frank Frazetta, but I did not know about his Adventures of the Snowman. But apparently this was, the solicit says, although informed by World War II propaganda, Frank Frazetta's earliest work is nevertheless as artistically nuanced and socially complex as it is innocent. For the first time ever now, witness the first complete story from a modern master with Frank Frazetta's The Adventures of Snowman. And I'm curious, I did not know about The Adventures of Snowman, and I'm wondering if our listeners, whether or not they're avid Frank Frazetta fans, have ever read any of these Adventures of the Snowman in any form whatsoever. So maybe you can chime in on the forum and let us know, or send us an email. But that's something that is definitely worth getting. So that is intriguing from a classic artist in comics, but also a piece of history.
Yeah, and when I saw that in the previews catalog, I kind of had to do a double take, because you hear Frank Frazetta and you have a certain image in your mind, swords and sorcery and half naked women or completely naked women, and to see this kind of cute little snowman. Well, I guess he's not really cute, but you see this snowman tromping across the snow, and it was like, whoa, you just weren't used to that. So yeah,
he's a cute, angry snowman.
He's a cute, angry snowman. Definitely, he's got something on his mind. So yeah, if listeners were previously aware of this, it would be great to hear from you.
Okay. So now you said you go to page 70. What now?
I go to page 72.
Okay.
And there is a title called Pixu, Pixu, The Mark of Evil, and I saw that this was by Gabriel Ba, Fabio Moon, and Becky Cloonan, and apparently all three take on writing and art chores. This is actually a book that's a reissue that came out in 2009 that I missed, and it's got a little again, I don't want to read all the solicits, but it says that this is a gripping tale of urban horror that follows the lives of 5 lonely tenants, strangers whose lives become intertwined when they discover a dark mark scrawled on the walls of their building. So it got the intrigues, the horror part of me that likes that type of tale. And again, those 3 creators, Gabriel Ba, Fabio Moon, Becky Cloonan, do some of my favorites. They're some of my favorite creators. So I don't know when this came out, if it was a big deal, or
I don't know. And you said that you missed out on this the first time around when it was originally published in, what did you say, 2009?
I think 2009 is when it first came out.
To tell you how lame I am, I completely overlooked this in this month's catalog, because I was looking through, and I think why I missed this is right next to it on the same page is the trade paperback of Lady Killer, and I thought, okay, well, we already discussed that once on the show. I don't know if I want to highlight this in the preview show. And then I completely overlooked Pixu. But man, Gabriel Ba, Fabio Moon, and Becky Cloonan, I'm marking this now.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be at least worth a look.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything else in Dark Horse? Because there are a couple of others that I have highlighted.
No, go ahead. I don't have anything until Vertigo.
On page 77, we get another in the EC archives, and this one is Volume 1 of Two-Fisted Tales. And if I'm not mistaken, this is another one that had previously been published by Gemstone that now Dark Horse is going back and reissuing. So, for those who have listened to the podcast for a while, you know that every time one of these EC archives are solicited in a previews, I always have to say something about it. There have been many collections over the decades of the EC collection, the various EC comics. But I guess the most recent ones began back in the early to mid 2000s, and Gemstone was reissuing these in color and by title in the order of the publication. So, for instance, this volume is just Two-Fisted Tales. Other ones, Tales from the Crypt, and so on and so forth. And then they did that for a number of years, but then they, for whatever reason, quit publishing those, and I don't know the reasons behind it, the economics or whatnot. But then it was GC Press picked it up for 2 of these, the next EC Archive volumes, and then they quit publishing for about a couple of years. And then it was over 2 years ago, I think it was, that Dark Horse, maybe about 2 years ago, that they picked up the mantle from Gemstone and then GC and started to basically pick up where Gemstone and GC left off. But now, I guess Dark Horse is starting slowly to reissue what Gemstone had collected previously, and I think this is one of those. So, I get these, and I'm pretty sure that this is one I already have. But it's worth mentioning if you did not get the Gemstone version.
Yeah, those archive editions that Dark Horse puts out are really, really nice. And the only reason I have not bought any of them, I mean, I've looked through some of them, is if I bought one, I would want to buy them all.
That's it.
And I would have no funds.
Yes. You
and it's bad enough as it is.
Yeah. Now, the only other thing I have in Dark Horse is on that next page, and this is 78. And this is the Astro Boy Omnibus, Volume 1. And if you guys out there do not know who Astro Boy is, then there's a big gap in your comics history that you need to address. This is basically the comic that put the godfather of manga, Osamu Tezuka, on the map. He's done a variety of things, after this, of course, or he did a variety of things, but this is what he was originally known for. This is what made the big splash. Dark Horse has a very strong manga library, and they have for years. And what they like to do is to go back and collect classic manga, and they've done this with Lone Wolf and Cub, and with other titles recently, but now they're starting to do this with Astro Boy, and it's about time. Because Astro Boy, you would think it would be easier to find than it is, but the times that I've found past collections of Astro Boy, they've been used bookstores, like half-price bookstores where I live, and so it's going to be nice that apparently they're going to collect all of these in omnibus editions.
Yeah, and this is a pretty nice deal. I mean, it's $20 and you get nearly 700 pages.
Exactly.
So yeah, I actually might have to rethink that one.
And this may be one that Shay and I talk about on a future manga show.
Ah, that would be a great idea.
Yeah. And by the way, if you didn't know that we do a manga show in the Comics Alternative, then you missed out on some of the things that we did last week. We decided, probably against my better senses, to do a monthly manga show. And I say against my better senses is because this is more work for me. Where once a month, it's kind of like, Andy, what you and I do with the webcomics, right? Once a month, you and I get together and we highlight 3 webcomics. My co-host for the manga show is Shay Henham, who, if you listen to our on-location shows every month at Collected Comics, you'll know who this is. This is a guy who knows his manga, and when I was considering this a couple of months ago, I thought he would be the guy to really bring on to discuss manga with me. And so we started last week with our April episode, and where Andy is, whereas our webcomic shows every month goes up around the first part of every month, the manga shows will go up the last part of every month.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing that once a month, and this may be a future title that we look at, the Omnibus Volume 1 of Astro Boy. So now we turn to the DC Vertigo section. And is there anything in DC proper before Vertigo that you want to highlight?
No.
Okay. Is there anything in Vertigo you want to highlight?
Yeah. The first thing I have is on page 139. Mm-hmm. Is that what you have?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is Free Country, A Tale of the Children's Crusade. This is a hardcover written by Neil Gaiman and several others, with art by Peter Gross and Chris Bacalo, and several other people. This is a 200-page hardcover that's going to be on sale September the 23rd. This collects the 2-issue miniseries, The Children's Crusade. And, I'm really excited about that. Anything that Neil Gaiman does, I am pretty much on board with. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned that this collects the previous 2 issues of The Children's Crusade, but there's also going to be a brand new third part of this where the story, The Children's Crusade, is going to be concluded by Toby Litt and Peter Gross.
Right.
So, and this is a Dead Boy Detective narrative as well. Now, were you reading the latest series from Vertigo, Dead Boy Detectives?
I've picked it up a couple of times, but I've never bought it or taken it home from the library yet. Mm-hmm. So I probably should read that first.
Yeah, I started reading that series. I think I got through the first 3 issues, and I kind of left off, not because I didn't like it, just for lack of time. Mm. But you're right. Anytime that Neil Gaiman does something, it's worth paying attention to. And so this is notable not only for that fact, but also that, it's a story that hasn't been collected and it's being wrapped up now.
Yeah.
There are a couple of other things I want to highlight in Vertigo. I don't know if you are wanting to highlight the same.
Yeah, I got a couple of more things, but are you going to the next page?
Yeah, on 141.
Yep.
Yeah,
me too.
In the Astro City?
Actually, more the Tim Seeley.
Oh, okay. So the first volume of Effigy?
Yeah, but go ahead with Astro City because I have not read Volume 1, which is probably the only reason I would not pick up Volume 2 yet.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, it's worth noting that one of the things that Vertigo has been doing is, in addition to collecting their current ongoing Astro City series, is they're going back and reissuing older volumes of Astro City, many of which have been out of print for a long time, and so they're filling in that gap. They started this a few months ago, and they're continuing this now with a new edition of Confession, Astro City Volume 2, so in a nice hardbound edition. So there you go. And you wanted to talk about Effigy.
Yeah, and now is Effigy the other one of the other? No, it wouldn't be the other title you were talking about earlier, but it is another Tim Seeley title, which we referred to. Yeah,
Sundowners is Dark Horse.
And this one is Vertigo.
Right, Tim Seeley's all over the place.
He is. He must not ever sleep. So Effigy is not a title that I had been reading in single issues, but when I saw this trade paperback coming up, I thought this would be a good time to jump on to Effigy. And Effigy is about former child star Chandra Jackson returning to her hometown of Effigy Mound, Ohio, to find a seemingly impossible crime, a fresh corpse in an ancient Indian burial site. Even weirder, the murder resembles a scene from an episode of her old TV show, Star Cop, a live-action children's show about a kid detective. So, yeah, that's something that I just can't say no to.
Exactly. And if you remember a few months back, I guess, Andy Kunka and I reviewed issue number 1 of Effigy, and we really liked it. It's well worth checking out. I think it's a great premise, and it's one of those Vertigo titles that, we speculated about this at the time. Is this going to be one of their longer ongoing titles? It doesn't seem like it would be, because it probably does have an endpoint that Seeley has in mind. So I don't know how long this will go for, but it definitely is worth a series to check out.
Yep.
So if you're not reading it in single issues, like Andy, you're not, then the trade's a great way of jumping on. Now, if we turn the page, there are 2 other things that I wanted to mention in Vertigo, and then I think that's it I have that's all I have in Vertigo. On page 142 is the final trade collection of Fairest. We know that Fables is about to end, and Fables has ended now. I think 33, hasn't issue 33 already come out?
I don't know. I haven't kept up with Fables.
Yeah, but Fairest is
with Fairest.
But Fairest is the very it's ending, and this is the last trade collection there. So, in fact, I think in July, when that very last issue of Fables comes out, 150, which is also a trade, Kunka and I might do a special episode devoted exclusively to Fables. kind of because it's an important series. It's probably my favorite right now, so it's going to be sad for me when it ends. But anyway, this is the last trade of Fairest, and then on that facing page 143 is something interesting. I didn't think they would do this with Sweet Tooth, but they are. They're coming out with Sweet Tooth in hardbound deluxe editions.
Yeah, I had that marked as well, and I have all of those in trade, so I'm not sure if I'm going to get this. But this looks like it would be a really, really nice edition. This is the first 12 issues of Sweet Tooth, which for a lot of people, that was their first exposure to Jeff Lemire, which is a great way to start reading him. And I thought this was just an amazingly good series, and I'm really excited that it's getting the hardcover deluxe edition treatment.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I was a little surprised, not surprised that they would collect this in deluxe editions, but for some reason, it didn't occur to me that they would this quickly, because Sweet Tooth ended, well, actually, it's been longer than I thought. It's been about 2 years at least, maybe, since it ended. It doesn't seem that long ago. Now, Vertigo does a great job when it comes to these deluxe editions, and they have a variety of them that they've put out. I've gotten the ones for Preacher, Why the Last Man, Ex Machina. I know that's Wildstorm, but and they have it for other series as well. Just recently, they started doing it for Scalped, and then a little before that for DMZ. And of course, they've been doing this with Fairest for quite a number of years now. But now Sweet Tooth is going to join the deluxe edition crew. And these are great volumes to have. And if you don't have the trades, I think they're definitely worth getting. I have the individual issues of Sweet Tooth, Andy, so maybe I can justify getting the deluxe edition more than you can. But even now, I don't know if I can justify getting it. But we'll see. It's definitely worth getting, especially if you are not familiar with Sweet Tooth. It's a great introduction. Yeah,
I agree. I'm excited to see it coming out.
So anything else in DC/Vertigo before we move on to IDW?
Nope, not from me.
And do you have anything in IDW?
I do. Actually, I go to 190.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're quite a ways in. In fact, I think you're where I am.
Okay. Did you have the same thing?
90 and 91.
Okay. Yeah. On page 190, I have a title. It's actually a top shelf IDW title called Tim Ginger. And this is by Julian Hanshaw. And I had not heard of this before. And really, they don't give you very much to go on. There's a very small solicit, which says the prize-winning British cartoonist Julian Hanshaw makes his American debut with the rich and meditative story of Tim Ginger. Once a government test pilot, now a widower, Tim enjoys a quiet retirement in New Mexico until a conspiracy theorist starts asking uncomfortable questions, and the haunting reappearance of an old friend provokes some hard choices about when to let go and when to hold on. Now, the thing about this solicit is it doesn't really give us very much artwork. We have a picture of the cover. We have a picture of, looks like a guy looking out of a bedroom window. And then we have a 3 panels that are really just one scene.
Yeah, it's a triptych.
Yeah, a triptych of a lizard outside a trailer. And that's pretty much it. But even that is enough to intrigue me. The conspiracy theorist thing, strikes me, and New Mexico strikes me. So those are things that, it looks like it might be a little mysterious and worth a look.
Yeah, and I'm with you in that I observed they don't give you much to go on. Now, this is one that I definitely want to read in some form or another. It's one we could even review on the show at some point. This seems right up our alley. Yeah. But what strikes me is again what you pointed out, the fact that they don't give you much to go on. There's I guess an okay solicit and a little art. Given the fact that this is Julian Hanshaw's American debut, as they point out in the solicit, then the assumption there is that not many people here on this side of the pond know about Julian Hanshaw. I didn't. I've never read anything of his. So I would have liked to have known something more about this. And so we have, I think the first 2/3 of this page, 190, is devoted to Tim Ginger by Julian Hanshaw. And then at the bottom you have, other ads from Top Shelf, back in print, Jeffrey Brown books, and then also issue 46 of World War III. Okay, so fine. But then the facing page, the full page is for Motorcycle Samurai, okay, by Chris Sheridan. And this is one of the ones that I highlighted as well in this month's catalog. But I wanted to point out first that this is a full-page ad, and it says, roaring straight out of the pages of Top Shelf's free comic book day sampler. Okay, so Motorcycle Samurai gets a full-page solicit. It had a free comic book day sampler, but it still gets a full page. And then Julian Hanshaw's Tim Ginger, who this is his American debut, probably no one or not many people know about him, doesn't even get a full page. And so there seems a little something unfair about that.
Yeah. And the Motorcycle Samurai only really gives you 2 panels, too. But like you said, you got the free comic book day.
Yeah. And also for listeners of the Comics Alternative, this may sound somewhat familiar. If you remember our very first episode of 2014, Kunka and I looked at, I think it was about 5, maybe 6 digital comics, and we thought that would be, this is before Andy, you and I even thought about doing a webcomic show, but we thought, okay, why don't we look at digital comics, and we were kind of loose in how we defined, we just digital, web or otherwise. And Motorcycle Samurai, I think we discussed the first 2, maybe 3 issues of the digital series. So now you can read the entire first narrative arc in a nice hardbound edition. So this is something that I definitely want to check out.
Yeah, it does look interesting, but I'm with you on the marketing strategies for both of these books. It's a little suspect, but yeah, it looks, again, the limited information that we have here, it looks like it's it might be a fun book.
Now, do you have anything else in IDW?
Nope.
I don't either, and that kind of surprises me because there are usually several other things in IDW, and they have a lot of good titles, but for some reason this month, in May, there's just not as much that I wanted to highlight. I think it's just those Top Shelf titles.
Yeah, for me too. I kind of did a double take too and saw that there are, there are a couple of things coming out from the Library of American Comics, which I really like. We've got another volume of Secret X9, Secret Agent Corrigan coming out, and some Popeye classics. But there's usually a little bit more, I thought, in the IDW section, that would strike my fancy, but not this time. Yeah,
and things that I do like from IDW, for instance, on page 194, there is Weird Love number 8. But then again, I normally like Weird Love, but this is an ongoing series, and we usually don't highlight solicits of anything other than, let's say, number 1 issues for series like that. Or even, let's say, the complete Junior and Sonny gift edition. I know that we highlighted this several months ago when the regular edition was announced and solicited, but now they have a gift edition. So this is, wow, exclusive green leatherette gold-foiled gift box. $75.
Yeah, I think I'll pass on that one, I'm afraid.
Now, you and I probably have the opposite problem as we did with IDW when we come to Image.
Yes.
There's always too much to mention in Image, and I'm sure that you start the exact same place that I do, which is the very beginning part of the Image section.
That's right. Yep. It's hard to miss this, and it's hard to say no to this.
Yeah,
and
especially
we're talking
since
about,
it's on the cover of this month's previews.
Yeah, so I think we're all talking about page 198 is where we get the main information.
Yep.
And this is for We Stand on Guard, number 1, which is the new comic by Brian K. Vaughan.
And the art is by Steve Skrosh. In fact, it's worth mentioning, I'm glad that you're the one who really pointed out this title, or at least named the title, because I'm going to call you Mr. Brian K. Vaughan on this show, because you're the one who brought us the interview with the great Brian K. Vaughan. Had it not been for your connections and your diligence, we would have never interviewed that guy.
Well, it was just a matter of, the stars aligning. I really had it just kind of dropped in my lap. So, I'm glad to take credit for it. But
well, thank you, Mr. Brian K. Vaughan.
Yeah. Well, thank Brian K. Vaughan's father-in-law, who's in my book club.
But yeah, I think one of the things that's worth noting here, outside of the fact that it's Brian K. Vaughan, is this is one of the at least 2 new titles he has coming out through Image this year. And, this is in addition to Saga, right? And the premise of this is it is a tale that takes place 100 years in the future, but the conflict is between the United States and Canada. So, we're no longer friendly, I guess, 100 years from now, according to Devon, to our neighbors to the north.
Yeah. And the great thing about this, too, is this is going to be a 40-page comic for $2.99.
This first issue, yes.
Yeah, the first issue, yeah.
And, this is something that we've observed a few times on the Comics Alternative. There are a variety of Image titles that do give us these extra long first issues, and I really appreciate that. We got that with Tooth and Claw, which is now Autumn Lands, and we also got that with Outcast. And then there's some number 1 issues I remember noting that I wish they had been extended longer first issues, and I think Bitch Planet was one of those. I liked that well enough, but by the time I got to the end of that first issue, I just felt that there was more missing than I wanted it to be. Now, remember, Kunkka didn't feel that way at all, so maybe
right.
I'm just was being a little nitpicky, but I thought it could have benefited by being an extra long first issue to get us situated, to give us our narrative sea legs, so to speak. But, for various reasons, I guess creators, because these are creator-owned property and they do bankroll all of this stuff, sometimes you just can't get these extra long issues. But I guess Brian K. Vaughan can, and we have a 40-page first issue.
And, I'm really interested in this because of, something that Brian said when we interviewed him for the podcast. And if you missed that podcast, he talks about, of course, Brian K. Vaughan is an American writer, but he's married to a woman who is Canadian. And I think probably some of this comic may stem from some of the, the things that have come up from, being an American married to a Canadian, being with a Canadian family, just different. Even though we share so many things with Canada, the different culture. Maybe not culture clashes, but just differences in culture that come about through relationships with people. And talking with Brian K. Vaughan's father-in-law, who is a Canadian also, I have kind of picked up on some of that and really has enriched the relationship I have with Brian's father-in-law. So I'm sure we're going to see some of that coming out here, but of course this is on a whole different level with the conflict, like a military conflict involved. This is really going to be an interesting comic.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm definitely on board for this one.
Yep.
Now, we can always count on multiple number 1s every issue in previews from Image. And if you turn the page, and by the way, it's worth mentioning that we do have a really nice 3-page sampling of art, of Scorch's art in We Stand on Guard. But then if you turn to the next solicit on page 202, this is really interesting. Island, number 1. Now, what is interesting about Island is that, at least in this first issue, you have story and art by Brandon Graham, Emma Rios, and Ludrow, with a cover by Brandon Graham. But another thing worth mentioning here is that this is going to be a new oversized comics magazine from Issue, and it says in the solicit that each issue holds 3 20 to 30 page ad-free, underscore that, ad-free issue-length chapters of new work from around the globe. So that's really exciting. And if you look on, and we have a sampling, well, a little sampling of the first story from Graham, Rios, and Ludrow, but if you look on page 203, at the top of that page, you have, little panels of, I guess these are some of the stories to expect in future issues. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things that strikes me, and I haven't read this in years, but if you look at that top horizontal strip in the upper right corner of what I'm referring to here, if I'm not mistaken, that is Farrell Dalrymple. and that is art from Popgun War.
Really?
I think. I'm almost positive. And again, it's been a long time since I read Popgun War, but that originally came out in 2003. So I'm wondering if in this magazine, I would assume it'd be all brand new material, or it may be some reprints. Who knows? But, I mean, if this is a reprint, then that's fine. I have no problem with it. I think more people should know about Dalrymple and Popgun War in particular. But who knows? For all we know, this could be a new story from the Popgun War title.
And you know the thing about this solicit, I mean, we see that it's Brandon Graham, Emma Rios. We do, like you said, we get some sample art, but there is not one word about what this comic is about.
Mm-mm. Well, I think what this comic is about is an oversized comics magazine where each issue has 3 20 to 30 page ad-free issue-length chapters. So
yeah, I mean, and in a way,
it does say New Work. Yeah, New Work.
Because it's Brandon Graham. I'm going to pick it up.
Yeah,
but yeah, just a little something would have been nice.
Yeah, maybe so. In this first issue, we get a story from Brandon Graham about visiting his grandmother.
Yeah, anything, but like you said, we do have sample art, and what we have is pretty amazing to look at. I mean, that's going to draw me in. Brandon Graham is going to draw me in. I just wish I'd had a word or two about what might be inside.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me.
Now, if you turn the page, there's something else that I highlighted, and this is a hardcover, The Crooked Man. Mm-hmm. This is a story by Gabriel Hartman and Karina Becko, with art by Gabriel Hartman and Elizabeth Breitweiser.
Yep, I have this marked as well.
Because now you did a really good review not too long ago of Kinski.
Oh, thanks. Yeah,
Hartman.
I noticed that this was by the same guy that Gabriel Hartman that did Kinski, and this looks to be a completely different type of story with Karina Becko. I'm not sure. She's done some work with Star Wars Legacy and Planet of the Apes, so maybe you've seen some of her work there. So yeah, this looks like it's, and we get some really nice sample pages here about it. This looks like, actually it says an expatriate returns to San Francisco to take revenge on a former comrade in arms. Their battle of wills plays out against the apocalyptic mayhem of the 1906 earthquake. Mm-hmm. And we see that, that's very prominent in the cover of the solicit. And again, the artwork looks really, really nice too, really dark. And as you said, Derek, this is a hardcover. I believe it's a hardcover. Is that right?
Yep, hardcover.
96 pages. So, yeah, this is definitely worth taking a chance on.
Yeah, and also part of the art is going to be from Elizabeth Breitweiser, and I interviewed Elizabeth back in February when she was in Dallas for a con. So she does great stuff, and this just looks like all the way around something worth checking out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we turn the page, we see another new number one. This is a new series, Wolf. Story by Alice Cott, who's been, coming out with more and more stuff recently. Art by Matt Taylor. So, this one, the solicit says, the crime noir thrills and characters reminiscent of True Detectives meet with mythical stakes worthy of Neil Gaiman's Sandman in this original fantasy /horror/crime saga for mature readers. Antoine Wolfe, a hard-boiled paranormal detective with a death wish, has to cope with sudden responsibility for an orphaned teenage girl who might be the key to the impending apocalypse, California style. So,
yeah, and this is another one of those image titles that is going to be a longer book. Actually, the solicit has 64 pages for $4.99, but the picture we have of the cover says $3.50. So I'm probably sure it's $4.99. But still, again, Image is giving us a bigger book for just a little bit more money.
Yep.
And packing quite a bit into that. So yeah, I had this one marked as well. I'm definitely going to look into this one.
Yeah. So if you turn the page, again, another number one series, this is Rob Liefeld's Bloodstrike, and all I have to say about that is I have no interest in Rob Liefeld. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on that one as well.
Okay. And that's about all the new number one series that they have, which is enough, in the image section for this month. I mean, there are other things that I want to highlight in the image section. Mm-hmm. Not so much titles. I mean, there may be a couple of those. But it's worth noting that if you do look at previews regularly every month, like we do, you'll notice that they have set up the way they organize Image, sets up its section a little differently. Because after you get through the new series and even some other title solicits, like, you do have Savage Dragon number 207 solicited, Shudder number 13. But after you get past that, then they give you several pages with all of the releases in July, because this is May, so that means that with the single issues at least, we can expect to see these released in July, 2 months from now. And they give it to you by date. So, for instance, on pages 220 and 221, you see a whole series of titles that will be released on July 1st. Same thing on the next page, 222. Then on page 223, 224, 225, a series of titles, and then 226, a series of titles released on July 8th. And I mention this is because they really haven't been doing this in their section of previews. This is something that they do on their website. If you go to, and I do this often just to see what's coming up, ideas for review shows that we do. You can arrange information by weeks. So on what particular week of what month will be the new issues and even books coming out from Image. This is like what they're doing here, except they're doing it in the preview section. So this goes on for several pages. Another thing that is new about this Image section is they give you not one, but two checklists. So, for instance, you look on page 245, there is a Image Comics July Collections list of what books, trades, and hardbacks are going to be coming out, when, how many pages, what the maturity rating is, and the price. And then on page 247, you get an Image Comics July checklist. And so it's just another form of the information that they had previously on, when in July these things will be coming out. And I think it's curious that they're doing this. And I'm wondering if this is going to help them with retailers, because I can see if I were a retailer that this information would come in very handy. Yes, you can go online. Yes, you can look at some of the same stuff on their website. But having this hard copy that a lot of retailers use to order from, and to have this checklist, I think it would make it a little easier to order Image comics.
I think this is a really smart move on their part, because, like you said, this is a really, really easy way for the retailer to go through his list or her list and figure out what's gonna be ordered for that next purchasing period. Not only is it good, like you said, to have the dates there, but the page numbers, the rating, and the price. I mean, everything is right there. I think this is a really, really smart move. And I was going to ask you, do you think anybody else is going to jump on this, doing this?
I don't know.
Or to see how it works, maybe.
Well, who knows? I mean, if there is a significant uptick in store orders of Vertigo titles, they might. But then again, Image has been doing more and more when it comes to sales. And in fact, I was listening just this weekend to John Mayo's latest Mayo Reports Trades show. And so he was reporting, this is the tail end of April, for the sales, I guess it was in March. And the top seller of March in terms of the trades, not DC, definitely not Marvel, Image. So they're doing better and better, I think, and their sales model is very different from most other comics publishers. They're doing something right. And so if they do have an uptick because of this, how would you know it? Because their sales keep going up anyhow.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's nice to see. Even though we're not retailers, it's nice to see, like you said, to plan what we might do on the comics alternative, or just what you might purchase as a comic fan.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are certain collections in the last part of the image section that I wanted to highlight. Did you have any?
Yeah, I did have a couple.
Okay. I wanted to start at 236. Do you have something before that?
No, mine is after that.
Okay. Now, on 236, actually, I want to pair this with the one on 237 as well. These are both trades. One is for an ongoing series, and that is Bitch Planet Volume 1, which is titled Extraordinary Machine. And then the other one on 237 is for a limited series that is ending. So it's not ongoing like Bitch Planet. And this is Mark Miller and Sean Murphy's Chrononauts. And I think it's interesting that they've grouped these together, or fortuitous, for me at least, because you remember I said earlier that my issue with Bitch Planet #1 was that I thought I was expecting a little. I felt like I wanted something more, that I needed something more to really get into the series. And after that first issue, I more or less decided to wait for the trade. Mm-hmm. I felt the exact same way after reading issue #1 of Chrononauts. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I felt that even more so. And I've heard that Chrononauts gets better in issues 2, or in maybe 3. I don't even know if 3's out yet, but definitely gets better in 2, from what I've heard. But that's another one of those titles I thought after I read the first issue, I'm going to wait for the trade. So if you're like me and you're intrigued by these titles, but you wanted to wait for the trade, now is your time.
Yep.
And then what were you going to highlight?
I go to 243.
Oh, okay, because I got something I wanted to highlight before that.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Actually, I guess I'm highlighting more in image than I thought. On page 238 is the trade paperback of The Dream Merchant. This is Nathan Edmondson's story, art by several others, but Edmondson is the writer. And the reason I wanted to point this out is this is something that began to come out maybe about 2 years ago, at least. And as with Where is Jake Ellis, or Who is Jake Ellis? I can't remember what the second one was. We didn't get those concluding issues for the longest time. And I liked the first 2 issues of The Dream Merchant, but then when the others didn't come out in a timely manner, I let it go. And so I haven't gone back to get those issues. I was a little ticked that there was that much of a delay without any context, and especially with the same thing happening with the Jake Ellis series, which I still think is incomplete if I'm not mistaken. So, if I want the complete story, then, well, they have the trade that I might get.
I had the same problem with Jake Ellis when it first came out, and there was that huge gap, and that kind of that kind of jaded me to Nathan Edmondson, and I'd heard from other people that Edmondson has done this with other series as well, and it looks like maybe this is one of them. I'm intrigued, but I want to know a little bit more about the end. Now, is this is not in the series, right?
What?
The Dream Merchant, this first volume?
Oh, I think this is, as far as I know, this is the series.
Oh, this is it.
I would guess. Now, I don't know, but it took forever for those final issues, and I can't remember if there were 4 or 5 or 6. I can't remember. Again, I lost track after the first 2 because, the third one took so damn long to come out.
Yeah.
But I would guess that this is one complete story. This is not anything ongoing.
Well, that would make sense since the price point of this, most of the Image first trade paperbacks is $9.99, and this one's $15.99. So that would that's another thing that may indicate that this is the one-shot trade paperback.
Now, on the facing page on 239 is something interesting, and that is East of West: The Apocalypse. Year 1 is the subtitle there. So this is a hardcover. And the reason why I find this interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that a while back there was a hardbound collection of East of West, in addition to the trade paperbacks. Do you know that for a fact?
I'm not sure because I only read the first trade and didn't really keep any interest beyond that. So they may have. But, let me check real quick.
I think that they did have one, and then I heard somewhere that there wasn't going to be any more hardbacks, and so I thought, okay, well, I'll just, instead of getting that first hardback, I'll get the trade paperbacks. So I've been getting the trade collections as they come out. But then I see East of West, The Apocalypse, Year 1, and so at first I thought, is this something else completely? But no, this collects issues 1 through 15 of East of West.
Yeah, if it did come out in a hardback, I don't see it other than this one that's coming out.
And again, I may be off base, and so our listeners out there, if you know, I guess I could look this up, but I don't want to take the time to tap into the keyboard as we're talking and recording this show. That's okay. So I can look that up later.
I'm doing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the first hardcover appearance.
And I know that you had mentioned something about 243, but there's a couple of other things even before that.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'm not familiar with this, but on 240, there is Joe Kelly's Four Eyes, Forged in Flames, and this is a remastered trade paperback. I wasn't aware of this originally, but I do like Joe Kelly's work, so it may be worth checking out. And then on that facing page 241, The Last Days of American Crime, Volume 1. And this is a hardcover. And this is, I guess, a reprint of the critically acclaimed smutty, okay, I'm on board right there, sci-fi and noir first collaboration between Rick Remender and Greg Tanichi. Now, I wanted to ask you, is it Greg Remender or Remender? I've always wondered about
Rick
that.
Remender?
I've pronounced it Remender, but I've heard people describe it as Remender.
I don't know. Maybe we'll meet him at Heroes Con and we can find out.
We can ask him. But this is something that looks interesting as well. It's noir, it's sci-fi, but it's also smutty. So I want to check this out.
And I like the work that they do together on Low.
Yes.
I have not. I've got that first trade, but I haven't finished it yet. But I like the work they do there. So this might be worth a look too. This is going to be a hardcover as well.
Now, you said you are wanting to highlight what's on 243.
Yeah, we've got the trade paperback of Supreme Blue Rose, which you and I We reviewed the first issue. That was several months back. On the podcast.
Last year, yeah.
Yeah, last year. And this trade actually collects issues 1 through 7. Now, I have only read the first issue, and I was intrigued enough by it to get this trade paperback, and I have not read anything beyond the first issue. Have you, Derek?
No, so I was going to wait for the trade. And I didn't discontinue reading it because I didn't like the series, but because, one, I only have so much time, to keep up with certain series, because as much as I may like something, there are going to be other things that vie for my attention, especially because of the podcast. But also, it was around this time last year that I made a switch in the way that I get comics. And so instead of getting single issues, I've kind of pared back after first issues, not gotten anything after the first issue. And if I want to continue with it, wait until the trade comes out. And I did that more for economic reasons.
Mm-hmm. I do a lot of that too. I really don't buy that many first issues, but that was one of them that we looked at on the podcast. But I thought I'm going to wait until the trade.
Now, on the page right before Supreme Blue Rose is on 242 is Red One. This is a hardcover, actually. And have you read the first issue of Red One?
The first issue of that came out not very long ago. Is that right?
Exactly. And so that's one of the things that's curious about this. If you look at the solicit, it says this collects Red One, number 1 through 2, and bonus material in an oversized European-style hardcover. Okay, so 2 issues, and then bonus material in an oversized European-style text. Okay, fine. If it were paperback, maybe I could see that making sense, but they're doing this in hardcover.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That's a real
and it's only 80
scratcher.
pages long.
Yeah, Image rarely puts a first printing of a trade in hardcover. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, this is at least out of the box like this, especially with just 2 issues out. Now, I do have to say I've read issue number 1 of Red One, and I think it's an intriguing story. I was a little suspicious at first, but I read it. I think it was this past week. I finally got around to reading issue number 1, and I liked it. And I especially love Terry Dodson and Rachel Dodson's art. I guess this is where the smutty comes back into play here. They do a great job in representing the female form. So let's just say that. And as you can tell from this cover, which may not be the final cover of the book, but it's an interesting story. But what intrigues me is the fact that they're coming out with this hardcover so early with only 2 issues out.
Yeah, and maybe they know something we don't. Maybe there's something around the corner that this is leading up to. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
if that bonus material is cheesecake art, okay, then I can see it. Okay, I'll go on record saying, hey, that's the kind of guy I am. But
and maybe it is. I mean, I guess we won't know until it comes out, and we review it for the Comics Alternative.
Yeah. So I think that wraps up Image, right?
The only other thing I had was on page 244.
Oh, so you did highlight that.
I did highlight it, and They're Not Like Us, Volume 1. And the reason I highlighted it, I've seen the single issues come through my comic shop, but I have not bought it. I want to get it, and I don't want to get it. And I want to get it because Eric Stevenson is the writer who did one of my favorite comics of the last several years, Nowhere Men. Mm-hmm. But Nowhere Men ended after the first trade. The story didn't end, but we just haven't gotten any more from that.
Yeah, it's been curious.
Yeah, and I don't want to have that same thing come up again. So I'm really concerned that I'm going to pick up They're Not Like Us and enjoy it, and it's going to be pulled out from under my feet like Nowhere Men. Maybe not. Maybe that's not going to happen. But that's probably the one thing that might keep me from picking it up is not knowing whether or not there's going to be any closure. Yeah,
and that's a good reason to be. Excuse me. That's a good reason to be a little suspicious. I mean, I'm like you. I really liked Nowhere Men. I think that Stevenson did a great job there, and I also love the art of Simon Gain. Almost any time he does something, I pay attention to it. But yeah, if we're going to have delays, something worth thinking about.
Yep.
Now, I'm assuming you don't have anything in Marvel.
No.
Yeah, and we usually don't on this show, but in addition to their usual, 99.9% of it being superhero output, now we're in the middle of Secret Wars, and I'm just so... I mean, it's not that I'm uninterested in it, it's just there's a lot going on, and when it comes to events like this, I usually wait until after the dust settles and read everything, or at least parts of it after the fact.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I've gotten kind of tired of the big events. Mm-hmm. I might pick up a trade, if the library picks it up or something like that, but that's probably about it.
Well, so, that first half of the comic section of the catalog, I mean, it took us a long time to get through that because there's a lot to highlight. And now we're in what's called the back half. What a lot of people call the back half, and we can call it that as well. But I think there's still a lot to highlight. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've still got a lot of sticky notes.
Oh, my God, I'm looking at the clock. It's like, this is going to be a long show. Okay, so I don't know where you begin, but I begin in the alternative comics section on page 262.
That's where I go next.
Okay, were you going to highlight the alternative comics selections?
Yeah, Cheer Up.
Yeah, Cheer Up is one of those by Noah Van Sciver. In fact, we interviewed him on the podcast not too long ago. And this is a book from Hickok. And, I think it was last month, it was maybe the month before, that when we were doing the preview show, Andy and I highlighted the fact that Alternative Comics is now distributing not only their own comics, but also titles from other small micro presses as well, like Hickok. And a variety of others. I think there are about 5 total. So that's why over the past 3 months running now, the alternative comic section is a little chunkier than it has been in the past. But there's that. There's also issue number 3 of Farrell Dalrymple, aforementioned Dalrymple, his series It Will All Hurt. But then you have other books as well. You have Sam Henderson's That Monroe, Alabaster's Mimi and the Wolves Act 2, and then a magazine, and I can't remember what the publisher is on this, but again, Alternative Comics is distributing this, Study Group Magazine 3D. So interesting things that are coming out. I think I really like the things that Alternative Comics puts out itself, but I think with these other publishers as well, if you want a really good snapshot of what's going on in alternative and indie comics, I think you would do well to pay attention to the kind of things that Alternative Comics is putting out.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, I go next to page 268.
Okay, I don't have anything until 288.
Okay, well, actually 268 and 269. Well, just in passing, I want to mention some of the Dark Circle titles that Archie is doing, but this isn't the first time that they've solicited for that. But what I wanted to mention is on page 269. Oh God.
Oh no! Oh no! You're not gonna say it.
Archie versus Sharknado.
No.
Okay, now I think the best thing about this is that it's a one-shot, right? Now Archie's been doing, as we've discussed on the podcast a number of times, some really exciting things lately. Over the past couple of years, there's the Afterlife with Archie, and then the last year they started the new Sabrina title, which I think is outstanding, and then they. They're rebooting, or they're about to reboot Archie with Fiona Staples and Mark Waid, which I think is great. And they started the Dark Circle series, and so they're dipping their toe back into the superhero genre and giving it another chance with the Fox, because the Red Circle that they tried with the Fox not quite 2 years ago didn't take, apparently. So I'm excited by the things that are going on in Archie. And, Archie has a history of doing these crossovers, right? There's Archie and Kiss. Now that's going on. Alexis DeCampi is, Archie versus Predator. Okay. And I don't really get into that, but I can see where people may like it because it's fun. It's light fare. Okay. Nothing, to study and critique in a scholarly fashion. Fine. But there comes a point where these team-ups, so to speak, jump the shark. And I think that with Archie versus Sharknado, we've arrived.
I think we have arrived. And like you said, at least it's only a one-shot.
Yeah. Now, it may be fun. I mean, the thing about Sharknado, if you're listening to this and you have no clue what Sharknado is, then I'm wondering what rock you're living under. In fact, later this year, they're going to be coming out with Sharknado 3. And I don't even know what the subtitle is, like another damn Sharknado movie on Sci-Fi. But, Sci-Fi has a series of these kind of movies that are cheaply produced and outrageous to the point of being self-parodic. I mean, when you get to the point that you're so ridiculous that you parody yourself, by the second movie, then that says something. And it is kind of fun. Now, my wife and my daughter really get into things like Sharknado. I'll sit through some of it, but then after a while I think, I got to go do something else, like scratch myself or, just something a little more productive. And there's a part of me, there's a perverse part of me that is fascinated by Archie versus Sharknado.
Well, I'm not so fascinated, so I'm going to pass on it.
Okay, so I won't suggest that you help me review Sharknado or Archie versus Sharknado.
Okay, that's a big relief.
Okay, so now that we've got the Sharknado behind us, where do you go next in the catalog?
I go to 288.
Okay.
And this is under Big Planet Retrofit Comics. And we have or at least I think it's a new comic. I don't think this is a reissue from Box Brown, who gave us Andre the Giant. This is called An Entity Observes All Things. Stories of science fiction and mental extrapolation from Box Brown, best-selling author of Andre the Giant. Lizard aliens, new physics, electro mages, wastelands, Star Warrior robots, social media cults, and pizza. So, how could you not get that? I mean, it's Box Brown, so it's going to be good. And it looks like it's just, maybe just completely wheels off science fiction madness, which it looks like it's fun.
Mm-hmm. And, right next to that is another Big Planet Retrofit comic solicit, and that is from Oliver Schwerin, Mowgli's Mirror, which also looks interesting.
Yep, both of those look interesting.
Again, another example, if you're wanting really nice small press examples of indie alternative comics, another place to turn.
Yep.
Now, I go next to page 297. I don't know if you have anything before then.
That's my next page as well.
The Long Walk to Vahalia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this is an original graphic novel written by Adam Smith, not of the famous economist Adam Smith fame, and illustrated by Matthew Fox. So, I've said before on the show that I'm not overly pleased at the way that Boom, whom I normally like, I don't like the way that they do their solicits because they divide it up into, what's to love and what it is. Just give me one solicit that sums things up and gets me interested. I mean, part of my job as an editor is I have to not only write but also oversee that certain things are written, marketing copy. And or think like back cover copy, which veers into marketing. And I know that there is a formula or formulas for writing this kind of stuff. And I think by breaking it down into 2 or 3 different sections, as Boom usually does, I don't know if it's the most efficient way of soliciting. Maybe it is, and I'm wrong. But
well, they're making progress because they used to have 3 distinctions. They used to have why we love it, why you love it, and what it's about.
Exactly, and I'm glad they got rid of why we love it. It's like, well, of course you love it because you want to sell it.
Right. I don't care why they love it.
Yeah. So what makes you interested in this?
Well, the first thing I see is the artwork and the cover of it, which looks really interesting. We learn from the solicit that this has something to do with a Southern fable exploring loss, family, and what it means to truly come home. Great for fans of blankets, Fun Home, and I Kill Giants. So that part appeals to me. It takes place in rural Arkansas, and being a Southerner, that appeals to me. And it looks like from the sample pages we get 4 thumbnail pages of the artwork, and it looks to appear that the entire graphic novel is going to be in black and white and various shades of blue.
Right.
It just looks interesting. It says full color, so I don't know if this is completely representational of the entire.
Yeah, you can't tell if that's
work.
full color.
Yeah, you really can't tell. And again, it may be just one section. We just don't really know. But yeah, it's intriguing.
Yeah, and I think what got me is, as you you mentioned in the solicit, they referenced that if you like Fun Home, if you like blankets, if you like I Kill Giants, then you may like this. And I like those, and so I might like it. So I may try it out.
Yep.
Do you have anything else in the Boom Studio section?
No, actually, I don't have anything until 349.
Okay. I want to mention something just briefly, and this is in the Boom Studio section on 303, The Empty Man trade paperback. Now, I read the first 3 issues of The Empty Man. This is written by Cullen Bunn, and he's like Tim Seeley, right? He's writing all over the place. So written by Cullen Bunn and art by Vanessa R. Del Rey. And it's a pretty intriguing story. I like it, but after the 3rd issue, and again, not because I didn't like the story or anything, I just didn't read anything after issue number 3 because of time primarily. And so this may be something I will complete in trade. So, now you say you go next to 340 what?
349, and it's just a short stop.
Okay. Yeah, I'll mention just a few things in passing because some of this stuff you and I are going to be readdressing in future episodes. On page 316 in the Continuum Press section, you find a solicit for Max de Radigues, and I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, Radigues, Max de Radigues, Moose. Conundrum Press does some incredible stuff. They're a Canadian press, and you and I will be doing a publisher spotlight. I think it's later this month, isn't it?
I think so.
On Conundrum. So, yeah, I look forward to talking about that. But even more exciting, I think, as much as Moose is probably a great book that I'm looking forward to reading, I'm even more excited about what you find on page 318, and that is yet another iteration of Will Eisner's The Spirit. And this time it's coming out through Dynamite. Now, if you remember several years ago, DC came out with Will Eisner's The Spirit for at least 2 volume runs. I think it was 2. And then IDW had their Rocketeer Spirit crossover, which is a 4, maybe 5, I can't remember now, series narrative arc. But now we get the Spirit at Dynamite, which makes sense because, Dynamite does a lot with these old classic Golden Age and pulp, even before Golden Age, characters. Red Sonja, Vampirella, Green Hornet, Doc Savage, things of that sort. So now they're doing this with the Spirit. So this is going to be a new series written by Matt Wagner with art by Dan Schechte. So I'm looking forward to this first and foremost because I'm a big Will Eisner fan. Second, because I'm a big Spirit fan. And third, I want to see what Dynamite does with this.
And actually I may pick up maybe the first issue to see. I mean, I'm a Spirit fan as well, not as much or as long, have been a fan as long as you have. But I don't know, anytime we have some reincarnation of something like this, I'm always a little bit hesitant. Although I did read the Rocketeer Spirits book that came out was a couple of years ago and thought it was pretty good. Mm-hmm. But, it's just really hard to top those original Eisner comics that he came up with. But yeah, this is probably going to be worth a look. You'll have to let me know how it is. Yeah,
so, I mean, they're doing this, celebrating 75 years of the Spirit. Another part of this 75-year celebration is, and this was solicited, I think it was last month, DC is coming out with a new kind of a best-of collection of Spirit stories mostly by Will Eisner, but even including some stories that were written by others after the original Spirit run, like Alan Moore. But that is going to be coming out later this summer. So there's a lot of Spirit in the air.
And that's a good thing.
Yep. So now you say you're on 349, and I am there too, because it's one of my favorite sections of the catalog every month, and that is Drawn and Quarterly, correct?
Yeah, there's always plenty of stuff to look at Drawn and Quarterly, and far more than I could ever afford. I just wanted to bring listeners' attention to a new printing of Berlin, Book 1, City of Stones, and Book 2. Those are both being reissued again in trade paperback. Classic work from Jason Lutz. And Drawn and Quarterly also is having Berlin issue number 18 and 19, and some other great stuff from Drawn and Quarterly. Derek, you want to talk about the other titles?
Well, I don't want to leave Berlin quite yet, because now, have you read any of the Berlin series?
I read part of the first one long ago, and it will basically be like starting over for me. So exactly. I definitely want to pick up both of these volumes.
Yes, and I've got both of these volumes. I also have all of the individual issues of Berlin. I love Jason Lutz's work. And it's a good thing that they're coming out with new printings of the first book, and then now they're resoliciting Book 2. Berlin has been around for years, and for those of you who may be unfamiliar with Jason Lutz, and especially with Berlin, it's a series that has been going on for years, slowly, but it's been going on for years, and it revolves around things that are going on in the city of Berlin, Germany, in the aftermath of the First World War, in, let's say, the last part of the 1920s. So Volume 1, I think, takes place in around 28 and 29. Volume 2, it picks up after that. And again, it's a series that comes out intermittently, and I think that 18 may be where we have left off, issue number 18. And so I think the new solicit, if I'm not mistaken, for the Lutz part of the Drawn and Quarterly solicit section is issue number 19. Now that's going to be something new. Although the images that they have under, Berlin number 18 and Berlin number 19 both have 18 written on them.
Yeah, that's got to be just a copy mistake, because it's got the 18 as offered again, which, as you said, it looks like 19 is the current one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another new thing coming out from Drawn and Quarterly, and you'll also find this on 349, and this is a new hardback collection from Anders Nilsson, and this is actually, I think, more of a sketchbook than anything, and that is Poetry is Useless. So I don't know if you're a fan of Nilsson in his Big Questions, as well as other works. But what Drawn and Quarterly usually does is they will solicit a brand new title. In this case, it's Poetry is Useless. And with Jason Lutz, it's, I guess, Berlin number 19. But then they'll also re-solicit a lot of other works from someone who has something new coming out in that month's catalog. So you will see re-solicited on 349 Nielsen's Big Questions that came out 2, 3, maybe 4 years ago. I can't remember. And then you flip the page, you have other books of his, Rage of Poseidon, which came out not too long ago, Dogs in Water, the definitive collection, and the new printing on that. And then Don't Go Where I Can't Follow. So I think Drawn and Quarterly is really good about letting us know, or at least reminding us, about some of the best stuff they have in their catalog.
Yeah, and again, like I said, and we say all the time, there's just so much great stuff from them. I mean, you could literally buy everything that they publish, and you're probably not gonna have a bad experience. Their stuff is such high quality.
Oh yeah,
you can't go wrong.
I have to say, I get at least half of what Drawn and Quarterly comes out. And something else I'm going to get. This is their third brand new solicit or new item that's coming out, and this is on 350. Mark Bell's Stroppy.
Yes.
So this is Bell's first full-length graphic novel, and it's going to be a hardcover. Mm-hmm. And if you're familiar with Bell's work, you usually know it in shorter bits. He is the author of Shrimpy and Paul, which I haven't looked at in years. But he has a very distinctive style. And again, another example, if you want to know what some of the exciting things are going on in alternative and indie comics, Drawn and Quarterly is definitely a place to go.
Yep. And I was also glad to see the Moomin Deluxe Anniversary Edition highlighted again. This is still on my list to get, but I haven't gotten it yet. But,
yeah, someday.
Yeah, someday.
Yep. And if we turn a couple of pages, another one of my favorite sections, along with Drawn and Quarterly, and that is Fantagraphics. Mm-hmm. So if you look on page 354 and 355, there are a few things that I'm very much looking forward to. We had Noah Van Sciver on the show the other month, and he had mentioned the upcoming publication of Fanti Bukowski. Mm-hmm. Now it's being solicited, so that will be out later this year. 80 pages. This is collecting the various Fante Bukowski stories that Van Sciver has been putting out here and there over the past several years, so I'm looking forward to that. We also have issue number 4 of Sammy Harkham's Crickets. It's been a while since I think we had issue number 3 of Crickets. So I'm looking forward to that. And I've seen this before, but I'm really not familiar with her work. Joan Cornella, Mox Knox.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one. It's only 56 pages, and it looks like it's mostly wordless. But I mean, and we have a couple of sample pages that it's really really unique stuff. And apparently, she is a comic strip writer, and I'm not sure where she's from. But these are full color, hand painted comic strips.
Yeah.
And it looks really really fun and really unusual. This is on my definitely buy list.
Yeah, they said this is her first book to be published in the U.S., and they describe her style as absurdist comedy with transgressive political incorrectness. Mm-hmm. So, and it looks like from the relatively small 2-page sample that we have, that this is something that could have easily been included in Fantagraphics' Mome series years ago. Mm-hmm. Okay, so after Fantagraphics, where do you go?
After Fantagraphics, I go to...
I think I know
probably where you're going to. I see the big ad for it, and that's on page 361.
Oh, I thought you were going to go to the second section.
Did I skip that?
That's on 357.
Oh, the only reason I skipped it is because I just got this in the mail.
Yeah, I just got my hard copy this weekend.
Yeah, but
as well.
go ahead and address it.
Yeah, and this is something, we always talk on the podcast about the great stuff coming out from, not only Drawn and Quarterly and Fantagraphics, but also First Second. That's another go-to publisher for us. And this is a solicit for something that's going to be coming out later this summer, and that is The Divine, written by Boaz Lavi, with art by Asif Hanukkah and Tomer Hanukkah. So now both of us we're on the we're not on the Drawn and Quarterly mailing list, unfortunately. We're on the First Second review list, and we both got this issue. Have you had the chance to look through it yet?
No, I haven't, and that's why I didn't mark it here, because I thought, I already have this.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I flipped through it, but I didn't read any of it. But the art looks beautiful, and it's something definitely worth checking out. The way that they describe it is, they say, Mark's out of the military these days with his boring, safe civilian job doing explosives consulting. But you never really get away from war, so it feels inevitable when his old army buddy Jason comes calling with a lucrative military contract for a mining job in an obscure Southeast Asian country called Kwanlum. With no career prospects and a baby on the way, Mark finds himself making the worst mistake of his life and signing on with Jason. What awaits him in Kwanlum is going to change everything. What awaits him in Kwanlum is weirdness of the highest order, a civil war led by a 10-year-old twin wielding something that looks a lot like magic, leading an army of warriors who look a lot like gods. What awaits him in Kwanlum is an actual goddamn dragon. And, I think it was worth reading that entire solicit, if for no other reason, to point out First Second does a bang-up job with their solicits.
Yeah, they really do.
Not every publisher does.
No. And we see that, too, because like Derek said, we get a lot of review copies from First Second, and that the care that goes into producing each one of those titles is very evident. Every time we get one of those. And the thing that I wish more people knew about First Second, I mean, people know a lot of the things that they publish, things that are more recognized, like Battling Boy and things like that, titles like that. But titles like this, that may slip under people's radar. Really, everything First Second does is really, really good and definitely worth your time. Mm-hmm. So, yep, I'm looking forward to that one.
Now, you say you were going next to what page?
It's actually an ad page, because I couldn't find the page where the actual solicit is, and that is on 361.
Okay, so yeah, that's where I'm actually, the Grant Morrison, 18 Days?
Yeah.
360 is the actual solicit. It's Graphic India.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Now, okay, so I'm sure, okay, you go ahead. You were going to bring this up.
No, I was just going to say, it's Grant Morrison. Issue number 1 is only $1. So, why would you not get it? Grant Morrison pretty much tells you everything that you need to know. And if you haven't read Grant Morrison, I don't know if this is going to be a good starting place, but his name is going to carry obviously a lot of weight, and anything new coming out from him is going to be worth a look. And he's had a lot of new stuff out lately.
True, he has, but I want to quibble with your word new in this case, because, and I had to check this out as I was going through the catalog. When I saw this, I thought at first, oh, okay, new Grant Morrison. Oh, wait a minute now, 18 Days, that sounds a little familiar. And I went back and looked, and my hunch was correct, that back in 2010, coming out from Dynamite Entertainment, was Grant Morrison's 18 Days. And this is a 120-page hardbound book. Again, that was released in November of 2010. And I remember hearing a review of this it must have been on NPR, or someone mentioned it on public radio, and that's when I checked it out. So then when I saw this solicit, it's a completely different publisher, Graphic India. I thought, now, is this picking up from that previous series, or is this just a reprinting of this? Actually, I don't even know if it's out of print now, because I checked it out on Amazon, and you can still get a brand new copy. You don't have to rely on marketplace people selling older ones. So maybe they just have backstock. I don't know. But this is issue number 1. And I wonder if they're going to take this original 2010 book, 18 Days, and put out sections of it again. And I'm not even sure if this was originally collected in individual issues from Dynamite. That's something I should have looked up.
Well, I'm glad you did your research on it, because I clearly didn't. I just thought it was a completely new title. But I do see it on Amazon here. The hardcover from 2010.
Yeah.
Collected edition apparently, and this is Dynamite, 120 pages, and the original list price was $24.99. It does not say how many this collects.
Yeah, and I don't think this was an original series either, because I just, as you were looking up on Amazon, I was looking up on My Comic Shop, and if this was originally released in individual issues, it's not listed on mycomicshop.com, and they're usually pretty good about the thoroughness there. So, this may not be brand new Morrison, but still, any Morrison is good Morrison.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. And, for $1, yeah, shoot.
Can't go wrong. Okay, I go next to page 366. I don't know where you go next.
I'm 370, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, in the Hermes Press section, this is something that I'd heard about a while back. Babes in Arms, Women in Comics During the Second World War. And I think this is pulled together by Trina Robbins, so I guess she edits everything. And, when it comes to women in comics and the history of women in comics, I don't think that you can find a better go-to person than Trina Robbins. So she's pulling together a collection of these pieces for Hermes Press. And they do good work, so I don't know if I'll get it, but it's definitely something that I would like to check out.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to check it out too. I also like Hermes Press books, and I haven't bought one in a while. But yeah, they're definitely a good press.
So you say you go next to was it 371?
371, and that is only to do a quick mention of another Grant Morrison title, which we reviewed the first issue of a while back, Annihilator, Volume 1, hardcover, from Legendary Comics. Now, I don't know about you, Derek, but I did not read past the first issue, but I thought, when this comes out in a trade, I'm probably going to pick it up.
I read the first 3 issues, and actually this is a resolicit because a couple of months ago, I think, they had solicited the first volume of Annihilator, and I had ordered it through Discount Comic Book Service, but then, I don't know, a few weeks ago, I got a notification that had been canceled, with a little note that says it will be resolicited later, and now we have a resolicitation in the Legendary Comics section of this, so it is going to come out. And I'm with you. I really love this title, and I want to get the first hardbound volume.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Also worth mentioning on this page is the one solicit from Koyama Press. And I don't want to say much about this because Andy and I reviewed it last week in our Koyama Press Spotlight, and that is Dustin Harbin's Diary Comics. If you want to know more about this and you didn't hear last week's review episode, then hey, go check out episode, I think it was 133, where we did a Koyama Press Spotlight. And that was my favorite of the spring releases from Koyama. I mean, I liked everything that they're coming out with this season, but Dustin Harbin's Diary Comics is intriguing in a variety of ways. And in fact, I may be doing an interview with Dustin Harbin for the blog. Nothing recorded, but I think we're going to be doing that.
Oh, very good.
I have something if you turn the page on 372.
Okay, go ahead.
And this is under Liverite. And Liverite is the publisher last year who came out with Joel Pfeiffer's Kill My Mother, and also did the book that we reviewed toward the beginning of the year, Fatherland. So they're coming out with the first volume of the Marcel Proust adaptation, memories of things past. And this is the first collection, In Search of Lost Time is what they're titling this. And so the first volume is Swan's Way. So, I did get a galley from Liverwright of this first volume, and it looked interesting. But the thing about a galley, though, everything's in black and white, and you really can't tell much about the art because it's a little sketchy. Well, I mean, not sketches, but it's just not as sharp, and you definitely don't have the colors. But, I'm intrigued by adaptations in comics, and I know that Proust has been adapted in comics form before, but I think it's fascinating that they're returning to memories of things past, or I guess they're titling this In Search of Lost Time. So I wonder how many volumes they're going to come out in this, how they're going to package it. But this is definitely worth checking out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first time it came out in what, was it 8 volumes or more?
You're talking the comic?
Yeah, the graphic novels that came out.
And who was that? NBM that did it?
Yeah, I think it was NBM.
Okay. So
I was trying to find these for for somebody at the library a while back.
Oh, that's right. You emailed me about that.
Yeah, because they didn't really have. It was really kind of hard to figure out what was in what volume.
Yeah. I love what NBM does, but unfortunately, a lot of the great stuff that they've done is no longer in print.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Where do you go next, my friend?
I go to 378 with Oni Press. And this is a book called Oyster War by Ben Towle. I assume that's how you pronounce his name. And this is, the solicit says, in the coastal town of Blood's Haven, the economy runs on oysters. Oyster farming is one of the most lucrative professions, also the most dangerous. Not just from the unforgiving ocean and its watery depths. There are also oyster pirates to worry about. So, and this looks like it's a fun book from Oni Press. Now, this is a hardcover, 168 pages for $29.99, and apparently this was an Eisner-nominated comic. I don't know if this was a webcomic first.
Well, it must be because it says finally comes to print.
Yeah, it must have been. And the only thing I know from Ben Towle is he illustrated a book I read not very long ago that's been out a few years called Amelia Earhart, This Broad Ocean, which I thought was a great title, not just for kids, but it's a very kid-friendly, teen-friendly title. We do get a little bit of artwork here. And it looks very, very colorful. It has definitely has an adventure feel to it, and this is something that I think might be a good fun title.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed this out. And this is one of the great things in doing the preview shows where you talk about the catalog with someone else. This is another one of those things that I overlooked. And so this has happened a number of times when I've been on a preview show. I'll overlook something and Andy will bring up a title like you have here with Oyster War. And I'll say, oh, I just overlooked that. Just as, what was that other title that I said I had overlooked? The one with Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and Becky Cloonan. Yeah.
Yes. So, I definitely want to check this one out.
Yeah, it looks fun. It's maybe a little. I kind of wish. Sometimes we read the previews catalog and we see something, and this one in particular is a hardcover, and you think, it probably would have sold better if the price point had been a little bit lower and they'd done a trade paperback. But they've chosen to go with a hardcover here, and
kind of an oversized
one at that. But still, I'll probably pick it up.
Yeah. Now I go next to 384, and just want to mention something in passing more than anything.
Okay.
That the 4th volume of Grant Morrison's Zenith, this is Phase 4, is coming out. So if you have been getting these earlier repackagings of Grant Morrison's very early comics work, and I don't think he wanted this to come out, but now Rebellion 2000 AD is coming out with Phase 4, the 4th volume.
Yep.
Then where are you next?
I don't go anywhere until 434.
Okay. On 410, it's definitely worth noting, back to Will Eisner, that there is a new edition of Will Eisner, A Spirited Life. This is by Bob Andelman. Now, this is not a comic, but it's a biography, and I can't remember when the first edition of this book came out, but it was a while back, and this was a pretty good biography. And then I think it was around 2010, 2009, I'm not sure. Michael Schumacher, who we had on the show for Will Eisner Week, along with Dennis Kitchen, he came out with another biography of Will Eisner called Will Eisner, A Dreamer's Life in Comics. And I liked both of the biographies, but I do have to say, playing the critic, that each in its own way was incomplete. That there were a lot of gaps, and there were some problems with the various biographies. So I'm particularly interested what Andelman is going to be doing in this new edition of Will Eisner, A Spirited Life. And one of the things you'll find out, and this is from Tomorrow's Publishing, and Tomorrow's did not publish the original edition of A Spirited Life, and I can't remember who did, but it's someone that starts with an M. And it's on my bookshelf here, but I can't read it from this distance. But another thing about this solicit is that it is included in a combo pack. It's a book plus a DVD. And I guess it's that same movie that came out several years ago. Will Eisner, Portrait of a Sequential Artist. And that's very difficult to find. I was able to get my hands on a copy at one point when I was doing some research on Eisner for an article that I was working on, an essay. But now you can get the DVD and this new edition of Will Eisner, A Spirited Life from Tomorrow's for the price of $49.95. So it's a little pricey, but I'm sure you can get a good discount, or a decent discount at least, from Discount Comic Book Service.
Yeah, that is a little bit pricey, but like you said, it looks like the DVD is out of print. There's one person on Amazon selling it, a third-party seller. But the combo pack, it's a little bit pricey, but if you really want to see the documentary and have the book, it looks like a pretty good deal. That's a documentary I've been wanting to see for last couple of years, but I have not been able to see it anywhere.
Yeah, it's worth watching, and it's been a number of years since I see it, and I do have a copy of it. I'm going to have to fish it out, but I did like it, and it's for a general audience. So I think it's a pretty good introduction to Will Eisner, the man, and his art. So I think that, along with the new new edition of the Andelman book, is worth checking out. Now I next go to the Valiant section.
Okay.
If you have
I actually had something that was related to the last one that you did.
Oh, okay.
So maybe we could pop over to 434 for just a second.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of Eisner, on page 434, we've got a lot of Eisner-related books that are reissued, and these are from W.W. Norton. And you'll see there that if you are lacking in your Eisner books, you can certainly get caught up here. There's a new printing of A Contract with God, a softcover printing for $18.95, and you can also get Will Eisner, Life in Pictures, hardcover, Will Eisner's A Life Force, Will Eisner's Minor Miracles, Will Eisner's The Name of the Game, Will Eisner's City People Notebook, and a Will Eisner reader. So there's tons of Eisner stuff for you to find, in addition to the one that Derek spoke of from Tomorrow.
Right,
so lots of good Eisner stuff.
Yeah, I had, and again, we're coming up, this year's the 75th anniversary of the Spirit, so all of this makes sense. And every now and again, Norton will resolicit at least one Eisner title that now they have the rights to publish. And I had actually had the Norton page 344 or 434 marked as well. And yeah, all of these are good, and I'm glad that they're resoliciting these. Again, bringing to our attention again and again and again, because you can't do it too often, the greatness of Will Eisner. Although I do have to tell you, I find it curious what they're choosing to solicit, okay? So for instance, okay, yes, Will Eisner, Life in Pictures makes sense to me. Yes, A Contact with God, the softcover edition, of course it's a new printing. Yes, it makes sense to me. And even something like Name of the Game, okay, and Life Force. The thing is, some of these like City People, Notebook, and The Reader, yeah, I mean, they're fine. I mean, all the things that Will Eisner published, may not be the best comic in the world, but it's definitely worth reading. It's just that there's so many other things that they could have solicited. So, for instance, there are 3 hardcover collections that Norton has put out over the years. Now, one of them is Will Eisner, Life in Pictures, and what this does, it collects his autobiographical comics like The Dreamer, To the Heart of the Storm, and The Name of the Game, which is also solicited by itself on this page. But 2 other hardbound collections that it would have been great for them to solicit is not only Will Eisner's Contract with God, the softcover, but the Contract with God trilogy that has all 3 of the books. Contract with God, Life Force, and Dropsy Avenue, one of my favorites. But then there's a 3rd hardcover collection called Will Eisner's New York that includes things like City People and other books that kind of feature New York in one form or another as the setting or even as a character. So, and then there are other things they could have solicited as well. I'm just wondering why choose the ones that they did. But hey, any solicit for Will Eisner is a good solicit in my book.
That's right, and this is the time to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now back on 424, I wanted to mention in the Valiant section, and we don't talk about Valiant as much as we probably should on the show, both our regular reviews and on the preview shows. But I do want to mention this one, the trade collection of Matt Kent and Trevor Hershine's Divinity. Andy and I reviewed issue 1 of the Kent Hershine's Divinity several weeks ago, and I absolutely fell in love with this. So if you want the entire 4-issue run all together, then you get the collection. It's intro priced at $9.99, and I'm sure DCB Service will have it at an even better discount. Mm-hmm. So there you go.
Yep.
I say I rarely mention anything in Valiant. I rarely mention solicits in the previews catalog section with Viz Media, but this is the 2nd month in a row now that I have marked Viz to mention.
Oh, what you got?
If you look on page 430, there is volume 5 of Teo Matsumoto's Sunny. In fact, I was wondering the other day when the next volume of Sunny will come out. So this is another that Shay and I, I'm sure, can talk on the Comics Alternative about. So I'm particularly interested in this one coming out, but also Naoki Usura's Monster, the Perfect Edition, Volume 5 is out as well. So, there's a lot of things that Viz does that I probably don't read, either because it's targeted to an audience different from myself, but also it's these really long and involved series like Bleach. I think I've read the first 1 or 2 issues of Bleach. Same with Naruto. But, I mean, God, I think we're at Bleach volume 64 now, and I just don't have the time in my life for all of these. So there's a lot of Viz Media stuff that I would like if I had world enough in time to read, but I don't. So I tend not to gravitate toward the more popular titles like Bleach. But every now and again, like last month, there was that new collection from Junji Ito, the new horror collection for short pieces coming out. So now we have other things to look forward to from Viz.
Yep, there's tons of stuff. There's a guy that comes into the library and he requests every new copy of Bleach that comes out. And I think you're right. I think it's number 64, 65.
And on the topic of manga, if you turn to page 436, and I usually don't mention anything under Yen Press, although this looks interesting. This is Awkward. Svetlana Chemakova. And now, the name does not sound Japanese. And it doesn't look like and I don't want to say typical manga art, because as Shay and I tried to problematize in our first manga show, there's really no such thing as a typical manga style. But it just looks different. This looks more like Scott Pilgrim than it does, let's say, Junji Ito. But then again, Scott Pilgrim, Brian K. O'Malley's style in many ways is, I guess you could call it an Americanization of manga, or at least an art style that is heavily influenced by manga. So, but this looks something similar to that. And the solicit reads interesting. I'm not going to go through it, but it strikes me as something that I may want to check out at some point. Now, do you have anything else in the catalog?
I have 2 books in the book section.
Because I only have one more, and that is one book in the book section. So where do you go in the book section?
Okay. The book I have, or the first book I have, is on 451.
Okay.
And it is The Blacker the Ink.
Okay.
Is that the one you have?
No.
Okay.
I overlooked that one.
Yeah, The Blacker the Ink is a book from Rutgers University Press. This is the first collection to explore not only the diverse range of black characters in comics, but also the multitude of ways that black artists, writers, and publishers have made a mark on the industry. The book's 15 original essays take us on a journey that includes familiar milestones like Luke Cage and the Boondocks, while spanning everything from African-American newspaper comics of the 30s to Francophone graphic novels in the 2000s. So that looks like a really, really interesting book. And being a librarian, I think this is something that we need to have in the library. And I would want to read anyway. I probably will pick up a copy for myself. So yeah, I did not know about this, so I'm excited to see this.
Yeah, and Rutgers has that new series that they're doing on comic art, so this is, I guess, part of that. And this makes sense. This is just another edited collection to come out about black comics or African-American comics. Last year, the collection Black Comics, that's the title, won the Eisner Award for Best Scholarly / Academic study of comics. Mm-hmm. So now this is something that I don't know if next year it will be nominated just because the previous one won, but who knows. Now the next selection you have in the book section, is it on page 452?
It is.
Is it the same one that I highlighted on the graphic novel by Santiago Garcia?
It is.
Yeah, and this is from another publisher, University Press publisher, probably more markedly known as a publisher of comics-related material, comic studies, and that is University Press of Mississippi. This one, as I mentioned, is by Santiago Garcia. It says it's the first time in English, and it discusses or it covers the graphic novel as a form in a historical perspective going back to the early 19th century, European sequential art, working our way up through the United States in the 20th century, and even more current representations of the graphic novel, not only in the U.S., but in like Spain, France, Germany, and Japan. So I'm curious about this, especially given its title. Now, I'm currently in the process of reading a book that I'm going to be reviewing for the journal Image Text, and it's called The Graphic Novel and Introduction. This was published last year from Cambridge University Press, Jan Batens and Hugo Frey. And I'm a little more than halfway through it, and I have to tell you, I'm a resisting reader of this book, The Graphic Novel and Introduction, first and foremost because of the way of what you find in the title, the phrase graphic novel. And they try to address to a large degree what they mean by the graphic novel, and they think that the graphic novel is a term worth exploring and discovering. But I nonetheless see a lot of weak places in their argument, and this will come out in my eventual review, that, for all the strengths of this book, I mean, again, the fact that they don't problematize this whole concept of the graphic novel even more than they do, I think, is kind of a weakness. So I'm curious how Garcia is conceiving of what we, popularly call the graphic novel, and to see if he also has some issues as I'm seeing in what Batens and Frey does in their book.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, and with this book too, I'm really excited that he's going to cover examples from world graphic novels. It lists examples from Spain, France, Germany, and Japan. Mm-hmm. So it looks like his scope is pretty wide. This is a bit of a pricey book. It's $60 hardcover. And again, I know that University Press of Mississippi eventually releases books in softcover, but it may be years before it gets to the softcover edition. So if you really want to read this one, if you don't want to shell out the $60, your library may have it, especially if you're near a college or university library.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And this is something that University Press of Mississippi does at times, not with every book in their comic study series or their popular culture series. I know that several years ago they came out with only a hardbound edition of Comics and Men, which is a great historical overview of comics. And I even did a review of that book on the blog when the softcover edition came out, but that was at least a year and a half after the hardcover edition, so we had to wait for a while. And I guess that's something similar that we're going to have going on with Garcia's new book, is if we want a more affordable edition of this, we may have to wait about a year or two.
Yeah.
We'll see. Okay, now I hesitate to ask if you have anything else in the catalog, because I'm looking up at my clock and, man, we've been going for about 2 hours and 10 minutes. Yikes.
That is all I have.
Okay. This has to be one of the longest preview shows that we've done. I know that Kunka and I did one a couple of months ago that was a little on the chunkily long side. And by the way, chunkily long is grammatically correct, by the way.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, but no, I mean, you were right in pointing out early on that there's a lot in the May previews catalog to highlight. So I hope our listeners have stuck around. And, I don't feel bad with extra long shows of the Comics Alternative for this reason. I know a lot of people say, oh, you need to keep the shows to about 30 or 45 minutes. And my response has always been, why? I mean, I don't know how other people consume the podcast that they listen to, but I listen to mine primarily in the car and as I'm walking and jogging every day. In all of those cases, I start and I stop. I rarely listen to an episode of a podcast all the way through in one sitting. So I could be listening to an episode of, let's say, Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal Podcast, which is one of my new favorites right now, thanks to Kunka, and much to my wife's chagrin, because she hates Gilbert Gottfried. But I listen to that, but I have to, maybe take in an entire episode in 3 or 4 installments, depending on how long my commute to work is and how long that episode is. Same thing when I'm listening to, let's say, John Mayo's comic book page, or Chris Marshall's Collected Comics Library, and I'm jogging or running, I'll listen to it in maybe 2 or 3 installments because, those things go longer than about 30, 40, 50 minutes, and I'm usually not jogging longer than about 35 minutes at a stretch.
Yeah, and I like what Chris Marshall does a lot of times with his podcast. If he's going to do something that's really long-winded, he'll just tell listeners, look, break this up. Don't listen to it all in one sitting. Mm-hmm. Take breaks, and which is probably a good thing to do. I do the same thing, Derek, with the podcasts that I listen to. I rarely listen to start to finish straight through.
And we did warn readers at the outset that this was probably going to be a longer than average episode. So I hope that you've stuck around to the very end. And in fact, we'd like to know if you've stuck around to the very end by letting us know, sending us an email or something, and say, hey, we stuck around to the very end. But don't let our podcast listening get in the way of good quality comics reading. And the best way of getting your comics is through our sponsor, and that is Discount Comic Book Service. How's that for a segue?
That's good.
If you go to their website, dcvservice.com, you'll find incredible specials every single month. May is not going to be any different. So go to dcvservice.com and let them know that the two guys with PhDs sent you. And then after you do that, you can drop us a line and get in touch with us. You go to our webpage and you will find in your browser a tab on the right-hand side that says Send Voicemail. Click on that, and from the comfort of your own computer or portable device, you can send us a message. It's just that simple. Or if you want to be difficult about it, pick up your phone and give us a call the old-fashioned way, which no one seems to do. Our phone number is 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
And if you want to get in touch with us and find out all the latest things that are happening on the blog and on the podcast, all the new content, you can go to our Twitter. Go to Twitter and you can follow us. We are the number 2 guys with PhDs, and we appreciate all the people that retweet our tweets.
That's right. Also, email us. You can get in touch with both of us at 2guys@comicsalternative.com. You can get in touch with me directly at Derek@comicsalternative.com. And Andy, how can they get in touch with you?
You can reach me at Wolverton@comicsalternative.com.
We're also on Facebook, on Tumblr, and on Instagram. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on TuneIn. And you can still find every single one of our episodes, as well as our growing list of reviews and comics-related commentary that we put up on our blog at the website, comicsalternative.com.
That's right. Lots of ways to get in touch with us, and maybe you will get in touch with us in person at HeroesCon this year.
Yeah, that's right. We'd love to see you. And even if you can't make it to HeroesCon, you can still email us or leave us a message or participate on our forum. However you do it, get in touch. We like to hear from you because we do this for you, our listener.
That's right.
That's right. So until next week, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy.
We'll see you later.
I like them French fried potatoes. Mm-hmm.